If you've ever played Mobile Legends for more than a few days, months, or even years, you've probably had that one match where everything seemed okay at first. Your hero felt right, the map was clear, the early game rotations were smooth, but then out of nowhere, one toxic teammate starts complaining, blaming, or giving up, and suddenly the entire energy of the match shifts into something frustrating, even depressing. This video isn't about builds or meta picks, or how to rank up faster. In this video, I want to talk about the psychological impact of toxic players, something we rarely discuss but almost every Mobile Legends player has experienced. Number 1. Toxic players don't just ruin games, they ruin momentum. You see, when we enter a match, most of us come in with a mindset ready to play, to improve, or maybe just to enjoy a break from real life. And in that early stage of the match, we feel the flow, checking the map, tracking farm, planning rotations, setting up ganks, and all of that creates something powerful, momentum. But when a teammate suddenly starts blaming, refusing to cooperate, or throwing just because of a small mistake, that momentum, that rhythm you were in, gets completely thrown off. And it's not always something you notice instantly. Maybe you find yourself hesitating more. Maybe you tilt and overextend. Maybe your focus is now half on the chat instead of the map. And that's the thing, toxic behavior doesn't just cause a negative vibe. It actually hijacks your brain's flow state and replaces it with noise, doubt, and tension, which leads to poor decisions, missed plays, and unnecessary deaths. That's why it's dangerous, because even one player with a bad attitude can cause the entire team to slowly fall apart, not just in gameplay, but in how we think and feel mid-match. Number 2, it triggers self-doubt in players who actually care. Now here's where it gets even more real. Toxicity hits the hardest when you're someone who genuinely wants to improve. Because if you're the type of player who watches replays, asks for advice, or tries to correct mistakes, then toxic words feel less like noise and more like personal attacks. A stranger saying, "You're useless, don't jungle," or "trash tank, uninstall," might seem silly on the surface. But when you're already trying hard to carry, or you're still learning a role, those words don't just bounce off. They stay with you, they echo, and later, even when you're not playing, you might replay those moments in your head, wondering if they were right. You hesitate in the next match, you avoid the role you used to enjoy, you second guess your picks, your rotations, your every move. That's the quiet damage toxicity causes. It introduces fear into the way you play, and that fear makes you smaller. It limits your growth, because when you're constantly trying to avoid criticism instead of leaning into learning, you're no longer growing, you're surviving, and a survivor's mindset in a competitive game will always hold you back. Number 3, toxicity spreads faster than positivity in solo queue. What makes it worse is that negativity spreads so much faster than positivity, especially in solo queue where everyone's a stranger and no one wants to be blamed. One toxic teammate flames the jungler, and suddenly the mage joins in. The roamer goes silent, the marksman starts typing instead of farming, and just like that, what could have been a comeback-ready team becomes 5 people mentally checked out, or worse. 5 people fighting each other instead of the enemy. This happens because most players come into solo queue with their guard up. They're prepared for blame, they're ready to defend themselves. So the second someone starts pointing fingers, everyone instinctively fights back or shuts down. And now, instead of focusing on macro, objectives, and win conditions, players are stuck in this emotional spiral that has nothing to do with the game's actual strategy. This matters because you don't need 5 perfect players to win. You just need 5 players who trust each other enough to cooperate. When toxicity breaks that trust, even slightly, the whole team structure collapses, and no amount of mechanical skill can fix it. Number 4, it creates emotional fatigue that builds up over time. The part people don't talk about enough is how much emotional fatigue builds up from repeated toxic encounters. Sure, we tell ourselves to just mute and move on, or don't let it get to you, but when you deal with it match after match, day after day, it adds up. You might not even realize it at first. Maybe you're still logging in and queuing up, but your energy's different. You start the match already expecting negativity. You play more passively, not because it's smart, but because you're tired of getting blamed for taking initiative. You stop pinging objectives, you avoid using voice chat, and then the game that used to be your escape, your hobby, even your joy, starts to feel like a job, something you do out of habit instead of passion. And that's what toxicity does long term. It doesn't always cause you to rage quit. Sometimes it just slowly erodes your emotional connection to the game. It turns something exciting into something exhausting, and when that happens, you're not just losing matches, you're losing the love you had for something that once brought you happiness. Number 5. It makes you question your worth in something you used to enjoy. And here's the hardest part to admit. When you deal with too much toxicity, it starts messing with your self-worth. Not just in-game, but even outside of it. You begin to question if you're just bad at the game, if you're the problem. You start holding back from playing certain heroes, from queuing certain roles, from communicating. Even though those were things you used to enjoy doing, you shrink yourself, you doubt yourself. And sometimes, when enough negative experiences pile up, you uninstall the game. Not out of anger, but because you've started believing the toxic voices that told you weren't good enough. But here's the truth, they were never right. Toxic players don't define your value, their words don't reflect your potential. And their behavior says more about them than it does about you. Your growth as a player, and more importantly, your enjoyment of the game, shouldn't be based on how strangers treat you in one match. This is important because every player deserves a safe space to learn, to make mistakes, to have fun, and to find their style without fear of being ridiculed. And that space begins not in the game's code, but in your own mindset by choosing not to let someone else's negativity take ownership of your joy. Number 6, it changes how you approach every match. And what's really wild is that after dealing with enough toxic players, you start adjusting your mindset before you even enter the game. Not because of strategy, but because of fear. You hover over your favorite hero, and instead of thinking, how can I carry with this? You start thinking, will they blame me if this goes wrong? You think twice about playing your main role, because maybe someone else will fight you for it. And little by little, that paranoia becomes part of your pre-game ritual. Not excitement, not curiosity, but caution. And that caution turns into hesitation. And that hesitation, it spreads into your decisions, your confidence, your mechanics. This is important because confidence is half the battle in a game like Mobile Legends. When you're free to think clearly, trust your instincts, and believe in your playstyle, you grow. But when you're constantly bracing for someone to snap, to flame, to blame, you stop taking creative risks. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop leading the team, not because you can't, but because you're afraid of being punished for trying. And that's what toxicity steals from you. Not just the fun, but the freedom to be fully present, fully expressive, fully bold in how you play. The real win isn't just climbing rank or getting MVP. It's staying kind, calm, and focused in an environment that often tries to tear you down. It's choosing growth when others choose blame. And it's remembering that the game is supposed to bring you joy, not stress. So if no one told you this today, I'm proud of you for still playing, for still improving, for not giving up. Stay strong out there, and I'll see you in the next one.